Welcome to Late Night Horror Stories and True Crime. Tonight's story takes us deep into the remote woods of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, where 6 friends rent a beautiful old cabin for a springtime escape. But what begins as a peaceful getaway quickly spirals into a nightmare when they discover a forgotten graveyard just beyond the tree line. A storm is coming, and when the rain falls, something ancient begins to rise from the earth. Turn the lights down, get comfortable, and whatever you do, don't look out the window. This is They Came from the Graveyard. The road narrowed, the deeper they drove into Michigan's Upper Peninsula, the gravel path weaving through tall pines and shadowy birch trees. It was early spring, and while most of the snow had melted, the land still wore winter's chill like a fading bruise. Patches of frost clung to the earth, and the sky, though clear, held a muted grayness that never fully brightened. The cabin came into view just past a sloping ridge, a spacious 2-story wooden structure with a wide porch and dark green shutters. It stood alone, surrounded by woods on 3 sides and a grassy clearing that sloped gently downhill. At the edge of that clearing, just beyond the tree line, sat something unexpected, a small, weathered graveyard. The 3 couples stepped out of their SUVs and stood quietly for a moment. The cemetery wasn't close, maybe 100 yards off, but close enough to make them pause. Dozens of tilted headstones jutted up from the ground like crooked teeth. Some were so old the names had eroded away. Others leaned as if pressed by an invisible hand. A rusted iron fence surrounded it, its gate left ajar. "What the hell is that doing there?" Mason asked, squinting toward it. "Well, that's not creepy at all," Terry muttered. Dante, always the skeptic, shrugged. "It's Michigan. There are old family plots everywhere out here. Just ignore it." Shayla glanced at her boyfriend, biting her lip. "It's just weird, that's all." They unloaded their gear, coolers, bags, sleeping gear, and made their way into the cabin. Inside, the place was beautiful in a rustic way. High vaulted ceilings, exposed beams, a stone fireplace, and oversized windows that let in the pale light from the clearing. The atmosphere was warm enough for jokes and laughter to return. By nightfall, the 6 of them had settled in. Dante and Terry prepared steaks while Mason handled burgers on a grill outside. The fire pit blazed nearby, crackling as dry logs snapped under the heat. They passed beers, smoked joints, and let the sounds of the woods soothe the tension from the long drive. But then it started. A sound carried on the wind, low, guttural, and so deep it vibrated in their chests more than their ears. A long, mournful moan that rose slowly and then tapered into silence. Everyone froze. "What was that?" Jasmine whispered. "Probably a coyote or something," Eric said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Coyotes don't sound like that," Mason replied, standing up slowly. "That came from the woods." "From the graveyard," Terry said, barely audible. The fire crackled. The night felt colder. They doused the flames and went inside, locking the doors behind them. The mood had changed. No more laughter, just uneasy silence and nervous glances at the windows. Mason turned on the TV to cut the tension. Static. He flipped the channel. Still static. Then, without warning, the screen went black. A voice emerged, deep, unnatural, as if layered beneath layers of distortion. It was male, but inhuman.
"Leave before the rain comes, or you'll never leave."
The screen flashed violently for a second, just enough for a few of them to think they saw faces. Faces in the dark. Then the TV returned to its normal channel, playing a late-night comedy show as if nothing had happened. Nobody laughed. A sharp tapping sound broke the silence. Then another. Rain. It started as a gentle patter on the roof and windows, then quickly built into a steady downpour. The fire in the hearth hissed slightly as cool air pushed through the flue. Terry wrapped her arms around herself. It said, "Before the rain comes, and now it's here." The storm had begun. "What the fuck was that?" Dante asked, grabbing the remote. "That wasn't a channel, that was a broadcast," Eric said. "Someone hacked the feed." "Why would someone do that?" Shayla asked, her voice trembling. "To scare us," Dante said. "And it worked." There was a long pause. "We should go," Jasmine said. "Tonight," Terry nodded. "I don't want to stay here." But the men hesitated. The roads were dark, winding, and full of deer. They'd been drinking, and the idea of packing up everything now seemed overwhelming. "Let's sleep on it," Mason finally said. "We'll leave first thing in the morning." Nobody agreed out loud, but nobody argued either. Later, the three men stood on the porch, passing a joint between them. The rain had begun to fall. Light at first, then heavier. Thunder grumbled in the distance. "I can't stop thinking about that voice," Eric said, exhaling. "It didn't sound human." Dante nodded. "I've heard prank calls, I've heard radio interference. That wasn't either." Mason turned toward the clearing. "Look." In the flashes of lightning, the graveyard stood outlined against the trees, swaying shadows dancing around it. Another moan, deeper this time, closer. "I'm grabbing the binoculars," Eric said, hurrying back inside. When he returned, he lifted them to his eyes and aimed toward the cemetery. His breath caught. The binoculars slipped from his hands and hit the porch with a thud. Mason snatched them up and looked. The ground was moving, dirt shifting, arms writhing, heads pushing through the topsoil. Dozens of them. He backed away slowly. "We need to get inside, now." They bolted through the door, locking it behind them. The women were already on their feet, asking questions. "They're coming," Mason said, pale as bone. "From the graveyard." Thunder cracked again. The lights flickered. Outside, the moaning rose and kept rising. No one spoke. The moaning outside the cabin continued to rise, stretching out into a haunting, inhuman chorus. Not cries of pain, but something older, deeper, like the ground itself was mourning. Dante ran to the back door and slid the deadbolt into place. "Check the windows. Make sure everything's locked." The group moved fast, adrenaline overriding disbelief. Eric flipped off the interior lights, casting the cabin into dim, orange shadows from the fireplace. Outside, the storm raged, thunder cracking like a whip across the sky. Terry stood frozen near the kitchen. "What did you see, Mason?" Mason's voice was a whisper. "They're crawling out, from under the ground, heads, arms just pushing through the dirt." Shayla let out a sharp breath. "Number, no, that's not possible." Dante shoved a dresser in front of the front door. "Possible or not, something's out there." A loud thud struck one of the side walls. Everyone jumped. "Back away from the windows," Eric said. "Now." Jasmine was hunched on the couch, rocking slightly. She looked pale, sweat gathering along her hairline. "I think we should go. Right now. Get in the car and just drive." "Through flooded back roads in the middle of a storm," Dante snapped. "You want us to end up in a ditch and be sitting ducks?" Jasmine's lip trembled. She didn't answer. Another thud. this one at the rear of the house. Mason grabbed a fire poker from beside the hearth. Everyone stay inside. I'm going out there. The hell you are, Shayla hissed, grabbing his arm. I'm just going to check the car. Make sure it's still there. Make sure we can leave if we need to. Eric joined him. I'll go with him. We'll be fast. Before anyone could stop them, the two men slipped out the back door and into the rain. The wind howled between the trees as Mason and Eric approached the SUV. The rain was blinding. They squinted through the downpour, flashlights barely cutting through the sheets of water. Mason stopped in his tracks. The hell? The back door of the SUV was wide open. Eric stepped forward cautiously. We didn't leave it like that. No, Mason muttered. We didn't. Suddenly, something moved under the floodwater, pooling beside the vehicle. A hand, then an arm. Then something rose up, its body soaked and bloated, black moss growing on its shoulders. A jaw, unhinged loosely from its skull. It grabbed Eric before either man could scream. Mason turned to run, slipping in the mud as Eric's body vanished beneath the water with a guttural, choking gurgle. He bolted for the cabin, lungs burning, his flashlight bouncing wildly across the path. Another figure appeared in the trees, dragging itself forward on broken legs. Another behind it, and another. Shayla yanked open the door, just as Mason reached it. He barreled in, soaked and shaking, slamming it shut behind him. Eric's dead, he gasped. They pulled him under, Terry screamed. What happened? Jasmine demanded, rushing forward. They're everywhere, Mason said. More than before. Some are coming from the woods now, not just the graveyard. Jasmine's face twisted in panic. She grabbed her coat. I'm not staying here. I don't care what roads are flooded. I'm leaving. You won't make it 10 feet, Mason warned. They're out there. But she was already at the front door, wrenching it open before anyone could stop her. Outside, a clap of thunder lit the field. Figures stood scattered across the clearing now. Soaking. Silent. Jasmine screamed. One of the dead sprinted from the tree line, its arms swinging like ropes, mouth gaping wide. She turned to run, but tripped on the porch steps. Her scream cut short as the figure crashed into her. Another followed. Then 2 more. Blood hit the side of the house. Terry slammed the door. Shayla wept in her hands. They were 4 now. Mason slid the bolt across the front door with trembling hands, his soaked clothes leaving a trail of mud across the hardwood floor. The sounds outside were no longer distant. They were on the porch, pressing against the walls, the windows. Wet fingers scraped against the glass in slow, deliberate drags. They're not leaving, Terry whispered. No, Dante said. They're waiting. The 4 gathered in the living room, faces drawn tight with fear. Shayla was shivering, clutching a throw blanket to her chest. Mason paced. Terry stared into the fireplace like she was hoping it would speak. Dante stayed near the window, watching silhouettes flicker in every flash of lightning. Then came the first blow, a heavy slam against the back door. Then another, rhythmic, steady, unhurried. They're testing us, Mason said, testing the doors, seeing how strong they are, Terry snapped. We have to get out of here. There's nowhere to go, Dante said. You saw what happened to Jasmine. We can try the cellar, Shayla offered. It's not a long-term solution, but maybe they can't get in there. Dante hesitated. There's no exit down there. If they break in up here, we're cornered. Mason stepped forward. Better cornered than ripped apart. The cellar door was hidden beneath a throw rug in the hallway, an old trapdoor with a rusted iron ring. Dante pulled it up, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. The smell hit them first, damp, earthy, and something else, something foul. They descended with flashlights, the steps creaking beneath them. The cellar was a stone room, cold and unfinished. Old shelves lined one wall, filled with dusty jars and spider webs. A single wooden chair sat in the center. Strange symbols were carved into the floor beneath it, faint, circular, worn down by time. "What is this?" Terry asked, crouching to look. "A ritual," Dante murmured. "I've seen stuff like this in old books, wards, protection spells." Mason scanned the walls. "If this was meant to protect the cabin, it's broken." A loud crash echoed above them. Glass shattered. "They're in," Shayla whispered. Back upstairs, the sounds grew, footsteps, heavy and slow, dragging across the floorboards. The walls groaned under the pressure of dozens of bodies pressing in. Then they heard it. The sound of something crawling inside the walls. "Upstairs," Mason shouted. "We need to get back upstairs now." They rushed back up, but as Dante reached the top, he was dragged backward by something waiting just outside the trap door. The thing was thin, covered in rotting cloth, its fingers digging into his shoulders. He screamed, kicking, lashing out with his flashlight. Terry and Mason pulled him free, slamming the trap door shut and locking it. But not before they saw the faces behind it, half-rotted, grinning, with hollow sockets for eyes. One of the upstairs windows shattered. A figure tumbled in, landing awkwardly on a broken ankle but rising fast. Terry screamed and swung a cast-iron pan into its head. Bone cracked. The figure collapsed but didn't stop moving. It clawed toward her, leaving a trail of blood and black water. Mason jammed the fireplace poker into its spine, twisting hard until it stopped. Shayla was crying now. "They don't stop. They don't stop." A door creaked open down the hall. Mason raised his flashlight. "There's more inside. I swear to God, they're already inside." Another crash, this time from the attic. "They're above us," Dante said. "They're below us. We're surrounded." The moaning outside had stopped, but that made it worse. It meant they had come in. Shayla couldn't stop sobbing. She rocked back and forth in the armchair, her hands pressed to her ears to drown out the scratching, the dragging, the hollow footfalls from above. Mason paced, his knuckles white around the fire poker. "They're not trying to break in anymore, because they don't need to." Terry stood frozen near the stairwell. "What do you mean?" "I mean they're already inside," he said, voice low. "In the attic. In the walls." From upstairs, a loud thump echoed, followed by a faint, wet dragging sound. A creaking floorboard. Then a whimper. Everyone turned toward the stairs. "No," Dante said, raising his hand. "Nobody goes up there." But it was too late. Terry was already halfway up, flashlight in hand, driven more by fear than reason. "Terry!" Shayla called, voice cracking. Terry didn't answer. She reached the top step and slowly turned down the hallway. Her light flicked across the floor, debris, dust, and something else. A line of footprints, muddy and barefoot, leading into the far bedroom. The door creaked open an inch. "Terry, come back," Dante whispered up the stairs. She reached out with a trembling hand and nudged the door open. Nothing inside. Just a cold draft from the cracked window and the sound of dripping water. She stepped in. That's when she heard it behind her, a hiss of breath. She turned. A figure stood in the hallway, tall, rotting, grinning. It lunged, Terry's scream tore down the stairs, cut off with a sickening thud. Dante raced up, but it was already too late. He found her lying in the hallway, throat slashed open by fingernails like rusted hooks, her eyes wide and glassy. A trail of black blood led to the attic door, now swinging open above. Something clicked in his mind, like a breaker flipping. "We're not making it through this," he said quietly to himself. Downstairs, Shayla and Mason blocked the stairwell, shoving a heavy shelf in front of it. "Where's Dante?" Shayla asked. "He's not coming back," Mason replied. A moment later, the trapdoor to the cellar creaked open by itself. Mason's heart dropped. "I locked that," he said. Shayla looked at him, eyes full of dread. "Then who unlocked it?" A low voice echoed from the dark stairwell, raspy, gurgling. "Let us in." From beneath the floor, fingers emerged between the wood panels. Pale, waterlogged hands reached blindly through the gaps. Shayla screamed and backed into the kitchen, only to find the window above the sink shattered. Another figure was climbing through, its head twisted too far, its eyes bulging. Mason lunged forward and slammed the butcher knife down onto its neck. It didn't stop. It grabbed him, pulling him into the broken glass, tearing into his chest as he shouted for Shayla to run. She hesitated, then bolted. Blood pooled beneath Mason's twitching legs. He was the fifth to fall. Shayla burst out of the cabin into the storm. Rain battered her face, lightning carving jagged lines across the sky. The dead were everywhere now, some standing, some crawling, others just twitching in the wet grass like discarded dolls. She ran blindly, bare feet slapping against the soaked ground, mud pulling at her ankles like hands from below. Behind her, the cabin flickered in and out of sight, flashes of firelight inside, bodies swarming around it. She didn't scream. She couldn't. Something deep inside her had gone cold. She reached the tree line, stumbling through branches and slick pine needles, her breath ragged. The forest was darker here, shadows moving unnaturally, bending and shifting like they had minds of their own. But ahead, just barely visible through the trees, was the graveyard. It looked wrong. The tombstones were gone, all of them. What remained was a wide pit, its edges crumbling in the rain, black soil rolling down into a vast, yawning chasm that pulsed like it was alive. She crept closer, the air growing thick with the scent of rot and old iron. The moaning was louder now, echoing from within the earth itself. Then she heard a voice. Not the guttural chorus from before. This one was smooth, gentle, familiar. It was Mason, calling her name. "Shayla." She turned sharply, eyes wide. There he was, standing near a dead tree just before the pit. Shirt torn, chest bleeding, but smiling. He held out his hand. "You don't have to run anymore," he said softly. "It's over. We made it." Her lips quivered. You died." "No," he said. "I woke up. I was just tired, but I'm here now. Come with me." Behind him, others emerged. Terry, Dante, Jasmine, Eric, all smiling, all wrong. Their bodies glistened with mud and blood, movements jerky, heads tilted at unnatural angles. Their eyes were black voids. "No," Shayla said, stepping back. Mason's smile widened. "There's nowhere else to go." She turned and ran, only to find a wall of the dead behind her, shoulder to shoulder, silent, watching. Then she felt it, hands on her ankles. She looked down. From the muddy earth, arms had erupted, grabbing her legs. She screamed, kicked, clawed. But they were too many. Cold fingers wrapped around her wrists, her waist, her throat. She was dragged toward the pit. Face up, the last thing she saw was the sky. The storm breaking, the stars swallowed by a wall of black clouds, and the figures of her friends standing at the edge of the grave, welcoming her home. Then she was gone, swallowed by the earth. The pit sealed itself. The field grew quiet. By morning the cabin sat undisturbed, the clearing peaceful once more. The graveyard stood silent, empty headstones back in place, as if no one had ever been there at all. Thank you for joining us this evening on Late Night Horror Stories and True Crime. If tonight's tale gave you chills or left you checking your windows, we invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another terrifying tale. From haunted cabins to forgotten graveyards, we've got plenty more waiting for you in the shadows. Until next time, sleep tight, if you can.